Welcome to Acorn to Oak with Penny Quayle Pierce and co-host Matthew Donachie. Within each acorn, there is the DNA that strives to be a mighty oak tree. All it needs to reach its potential for greatness is to be activated. You are the acorn. On this show, we will share with you the tools and guidance you need to grow into the person you are meant to be. And now your host, Penny Quayle Pierce and co-host Matthew Donachie.
Hi, good evening to the show, good afternoon to the show, wherever you're listening to us, and whatever time you're listening to us. So hopefully, again, Matthew is going to be joining me soon. But what we'll be discussing today is basically discussing the journey that we all take from the head to the heart. You know, it can be one of the longest, most hair-raising, adrenaline-pumping journeys of resistance, confusion, and procrastination. Sprinkled in there is, some denial, some out-and-out plain stubbornness. And it is the degree which we think and pride ourselves in our ability to think, the more we divorce ourselves from our hearts. And yet, others have a journey which is of beauty, acceptance, of joy, as there is a heartfelt surrendering to the need to be in control or have control. And when there's an inner knowledge and awareness that we are always enough, unconditional love and acceptance of self and others, then there is no competition, just a joy. And we'll be talking about, during this session, we'll be talking about finding a map to that amazing journey from the head to the heart. And as I was saying, it is probably sometimes it can be one of the most difficult journeys, but also, the most important word there in all of this is the surrendering. And it's when we surrender our way of thinking to actually know that we are enough, that we can actually let go of the need for resistance, confusion, procrastination, denial, and absolute stubbornness. I know when I was taking this journey from the head to my heart, it is that letting go of the need to be in control, or thinking that we can control our lives, that we can control the universe, that we can control every outcome. And that's when we start the resistance to living life the way that we would like to live it. And actually wanting the control more and more. And this is when we get this head-heart split, because the head thinks and the heart feels. So the head thinks it knows best. It thinks this is the way it should be. We should have certain moral standards, certain courage, certain ways of doing things. And it's usually because we've been brought up by our parents and our grandparents, and we have a whole history of ancestry that comes behind us. And it's always been obviously in my experience, it's the Quayle way, which of course was my maiden name. The Quayle way of doing this is this. And, you don't make a mess on your own doorstep. You don't talk about, you don't wash your dirty linen in public. You keep it very controlled. I'm British, you can tell by the accent. So, the British don't do feelings very much. So it's stiff upper lip and duty comes first. And this is the way that you do things. And this is very much obviously living in your head. for me also, with my own personal story, it's, part of my life was living up to the Joneses, making sure that, we looked a certain way, we were absolutely, children are seen and not heard. Our education was done in a certain way, in a certain fashion, and therefore, if you didn't make the grade, it was looked at sideways. And it was never, you're never taught to express how you felt. You were never taught that emotions were okay. You basically lived your life the way that you were encouraged to live your life, the way that your parents lived their lives, and therefore you were then seen as a success if you got good grades. I'm sure it's the same nowadays in a lot of families. If you got good grades, you were good at sports, you were seen a certain way, you weren't seen as being disruptive, yakka. Those were the things that I was brought up with. And therefore you were encouraged more and more to live in your head, because we were taught that every problem there was a solution and therefore an outcome. And one of the things that you weren't encouraged to do was talk about how you felt about it, or how you were going to be in your heart. And it causes, this is one of the reasons I think there's complete and utter separation from people who live in their heads but don't realise that living more authentically is living in the heart, and heart intelligence, and how important heart intelligence is. And it's really quite at epidemic levels, the way that the head rules and the heart is ignored or divorced. And it is, obviously part of the work that I do and Matthew does is very much encouraging people to take that journey from the head to the heart. And one of the tools that we use during workshops and retreats is to talk about heart intelligence. And I know that we have done this to a certain degree before, but we use a tool which basically brings those emotions down into 4 categories, which is mad, anything being slightly cheesed off, to absolute enragement, mad, sad, anything from being mildly disappointed that they don't have your favourite ice cream in the local shop, to absolutely grief-stricken, extreme loss, and basically catatonic with grief, right the way through. So it's right the way through the whole thread. Mad, sad, glad, which is being anything from feeling good to absolutely cooking on gas, in the flow, enjoying all the juicy emotions of life, in joy, in bliss, in peace and happiness. And scared, anything from being mildly anxious, which I'm sure Matthew's going through right here, right now, because he's obviously having trouble connecting this evening. So absolute terror. So those 4 emotions helps us with or categories of emotion helps us with emotional intelligence. And the amount of times where I've been working with somebody either on a one-to-one level or in a workshop or during a retreat, and we go around and check in and just find out how people are feeling, just to basically get a barometer of what's going on energetically in the room. And, I've gone to people and they say, hang on a minute, well, I don't know how I feel, I just need to think about it. And my usual answer to that is, that's interesting. And, getting them to realize that you don't think about an emotion, you feel an emotion, and then your mind catches up with it, but you feel first. And it's really incredible when you actually say that to people, is actually you feel first and then the thoughts come around the feeling. And it's trying to get them to realize that, we have as many neurons in our heart, so as many brain cells in our heart as we do in our brain. And that's why we call it heart intelligence, and it is so important. But we give our minds or our thoughts the power. And this is when we go back again within the Acorn to Oak and talk about some of the methodology that we teach. And, part of that methodology is the 3 levels of consciousness. And the 3 levels of consciousness is our conscious mind is just 10%. And it's just 10% of our mind's capacity. Our subconscious mind is 40% of our mind's capacity, and our spiritual mind is actually 50% of our mind's capacity. And when you look at your conscious mind and we give it all the power in our lives, it is only 10%. And when you look at that, you think, my word, there is so much more to me than meets the eye. And the 40%, which is the subconscious mind, is divided in, you can pretty much divide it into 2, and 20% of that is skills. So things like when you learn how to drive, when you have job related skills, your parenting skills, all of those things are in the skills section of the subconscious mind. It's things that we do on automatic pilot. We don't have to actually think about those things once we've learned how to do them, because we suppress them down into the subconscious. And as I said, we bring them out whenever we need them, and it feels like we do it on automatic pilot. How many of us drive to work in the morning and we suddenly think, I don't know how I got here? Because you weren't thinking about it. You were just doing it. And it's the same with, some of the skills that we use at work, and some of the skills, obviously, we've used in parenting and things like that. It's just automatic. So, and the reason it's automatic is we don't have enough room in our conscious mind to store all of that information. And the other 20% of the subconscious mind is, again, you can pretty much divide that into half, give or take a few percentage. And they're positive suppressions, and they're quite negative suppressions that we've put down in there. So the time that we stubbed our toe and we didn't want to feel the pain, we suppressed that into the subconscious mind. The time that we had our first heartbreak, and we didn't really want to feel most of the heartache and the grief around that, we suppress that into our subconscious mind. So we've got good things, and we've got not so good things stored in our subconscious minds. And, I always look at that as obviously the positive things. We've got gold down in our subconscious that we don't even know is there. We also have clutter down in the subconscious that we don't even know is there. And these are the things that we, when we don't take the journey from the head to the heart, we have no idea of some of the treasure that we have in our hearts and our subconscious minds, because our subconscious mind is the emotional mind. Obviously, the conscious mind is very much about day-to-day reality and day-to-day perceptions. And it's our fight or flight, it's our survival mode, and all of those things. As I said, the subconscious mind is the emotional mind. And it helps us clear whatever it is, and it also helps us get in touch with our heartfelt emotions. And emotion, energy in motion, emotion should come in, should be felt, and it should be shifted out, and we shouldn't hang on to it. Unfortunately, our conscious mind gets hold of it, and it starts up what I call the story factory. So it may be, here's an example, it may be that you met somebody for a drink, or you saw somebody for a coffee or whatever, and they say something to you, and you didn't necessarily agree with it, or you felt resistance when you were actually talking. And that conversation finishes and you go on your way, but you're walking down the road and you think, why did they say that to me? What was that about? Actually, I don't agree with that. I wonder if that's truly what they feel and think. And then you put it to, you're walking down the road and you see something catches your eye in another shop, so you immediately distract into something that interests you, and you keep walking, and you may well be going off home, and you arrive home, and the first thing that hits you when you get home is, why did they say that to me? What on earth was going on there? In fact, that didn't feel very nice. It felt yucky. And you distract yourself by making yourself a hot drink, and it just keeps on coming round and round and round like a loop. And this is why I'm saying that the power of the conscious mind is absolutely necessary, and we need to use it constructively. But when it goes round in a loop, it can drive us absolutely crazy. So here comes the break, and I'll talk to you after the break is finished, and we'll continue with this conversation.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs, and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, we know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntooak.org.uk.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
So we're talking about the power of the rational mind, or should I say the conscious mind. and how it can keep us looping around a conversation or looping around a set of behaviours, keeping us in our thoughts rather than our feelings. And we were discussing again the journey from the head to the heart, which can be one of the longest, most hair-raising, adrenaline-pumping journeys of resistance, confusion and procrastination. And it's amazing when we first realise that our head has a need to be in control 100% of the time. We realise that we're missing all of the juiciness of life, and we have to think about it. We have to be able to work it out in our heads. Otherwise, we will not accept it as a possibility. We will not accept it as a way of being. We judge things and we make them wrong. And if it's not backed by science, then how can we possibly accept it as a truth? And I think in the work that Acorn to Oak does, and what how we try and explore different possibilities with people, so they begin to realise that the impossible is only impossible because we think it's so. And we did a great workshop actually this year, but we continue to do this, where basically we set on the Saturday evening, we set up 3 impossible tasks, or what we thought or most people would think were impossible, and we very gently encourage people to participate with those 3 impossible tasks. And one of them was walking across 3 or 4 meters of broken glass. The second one was breaking an arrow with your throat against a board. And the third one was doing a firewalk. So walking across 3 meters of burning ash. And all of them, it's quite amazing. Your mind, before they actually did or completed the impossible tasks, your mind just couldn't accept that it was impossible until you actually did it. And I took part in these 3 impossible tasks as well as everybody else, because I'm somebody who leads by example. But I'm not a go do it. I'm a watch me and I'll show you how to do it type person. And even for me, obviously anxiety was up, and because your mind will try and keep you small. And your mind will try and tell you that you're going to get hurt. As soon as you step onto that broken glass, you're going to cut your feet. For me, I had the added excitement that I take blood thinners. So I thought, hey, well, if I really cut my feet, I'm going to bleed all over the place. And your mind will make you smaller than you are. And it is this is why the journey from the head to the heart is so important. And it was when before I walked across the glass, I just put my hand on my heart and I took a series of 3 breaths of just going, center myself in my heart, center myself in my heart. And again, the 3rd time, center myself in my heart, because I know that I am capable of doing this with no injury, no problem. And I walked the glass and obviously came out with no problem whatsoever. And we went on and, as I said, did the breaking of the arrow with the neck. And I must admit, being an ex-nurse, obviously, the first thing I thought, well, hey, if I give myself a traumatic tracheostomy, then I give myself a traumatic tracheostomy, and took a deep breath and stepped forward and broke the arrow. And it is just what it is, and therefore, needed to move through that. And then, as I said, by the time we came round to the third impossible task, it was actually plain sailing. I got rid of any resistance I had to the fact that what we thought was impossible, or what most people thought was impossible, was possible. And this is what, obviously we're talking about this evening, was, that head will try, or the conscious mind will try and keep you small, because its focus is your survival. Therefore, anything that it thinks will put you in danger, it will make wrong. And that's its job. When we were cavemen, obviously it was, if a big saber-toothed tiger jumped into the cave opening, then, your mind is going to go put you into fight or flight, and your best bet at that stage is to run, and therefore would dump the adrenaline, which basically would get you out of danger. And that was part of its job. The trouble is nowadays is we don't have saber-toothed tigers walking in the parks. And we still have that DNA within ourselves, and we still have that fight or flight response. The problem is then we dump the adrenaline. The adrenaline then pushes our blood pressure through the roof. Then we get dumps of glucose, which is sugars, in our blood, so that we have the energy to run if we need to. And then we get pumped. We're constantly having peaks and troughs of high blood pressure and high sugar levels, and then they crash. And then we go for things that will help us keep that little bit of a buzz going, instead of actually realizing that we need then just to look after ourselves, and we need to look at how we are feeling, instead of getting high on different peaks and troughs. So it's really important for us to understand that when we take a journey from the head to the heart, there is resistance, and there's confusion on how it feels, that it is safe to take this journey, that we are always safe, and we need to do some inner work in order to realize that, instead of being on the peaks and troughs of adrenaline boosting behavior. And the procrastination, of course, is just going, the what ifs. What if I make this journey from my head to my heart, and then I will drop the intelligence that I have? Will I be able to work and have the clarity? Whereas, in fact, when we do make that journey from the head to the heart, what we realize is we gain more clarity and more intuitive behavior and creativity, especially when dealing with problems. We're able to see outside the box and not just go down a proven method of dealing with that. And what you realize is that journey from the head to the heart is essential if you want to be an entrepreneur in this world, if you want to be a spiritual entrepreneur in this world. But also, if you want to be impactful and actually be the change that you would like to see in the world, you wouldn't get in touch with the passion and the stability and the absolute broadening of your awareness, which will be able to allow you to love unconditionally and accept self unconditionally, let alone others. We have, the different perceptions that we have in our conscious minds that automatically, when we take on board stuff from outside ourselves, we automatically start to judge. We judge distance, we judge what the weather's going to be like, what I should be wearing, what I should be eating, how I should be doing things. And it is an automatic part of our conscious minds to do that, to enable us to survive and to enable us to be part of society and life as it is right here, right now on this planet. But it's also really important to realize that the head will think and it has its role. But if it's only 10% of our mind's capacity, how much importance should we be giving it in our lives? And I would highly suggest that the percentages are probably right, and we should really give it 10% of our attention. And the other 90% of our attention should be with our emotional bodies, and with our spiritual bodies. But, that's my take on things, and it may not be your take on things, and that's perfectly okay. It is just making us realize that we are much, much bigger beings and more incredible beings than we have. And, I had great respect for, when the West was won and the frontier in America, when things were moving and population was moving west. And very much for me, that the one frontier that's left right here, right now, is the journey from the head to the heart. This is the frontier. This is where the exciting stuff is. This is where my passion is helping people realize that, yes, the mind is important, but the heart is so much more important. And, also the spiritual side of life, that's 50% of our consciousness. And we've just forgotten it. And, we'll be doing a show, in fact, after this one, actually, because this is a pre-recorded show for October. But we've got some exciting stuff going on in the next few weeks, and I hope you've caught up with those recordings, because some of it is really important for us to begin to realize. And, it is that journey from the head. The head has always been top dollar. It's always been, or thought it is top dollar. And and unfortunately the way society is and the way that science has evolved, and technology has evolved, it has very much been, this is where our focus is. Whereas in fact, what I'm saying and what I'm discussing this evening is that we've missed the point here. It is important, but, heart intelligence and living in the heart is so much more important, because in our hearts, very much, it's who we authentically are. And as soon as we realize who we authentically are, then we can make some decisions in collaboration with our mind, with our conscious mind. We can start making new empowered decisions of how we want to be in this world. And, I call it the bottom line. What's your bottom line? And in that bottom line should be, your values, your beliefs, your moral courage, your generosity of spirit, some of the people who inspire you. How do you want to be? Are you a kind, compassionate person, or are you a person who's just out for themselves? And it's, do you want to be impactful in this world? Do you want to be the change that you would like to see in the world? Or are you just being materialistic and out for your own gain? And it is, very much part of the process of moving from the head to the heart is actually discovering who you want to be and how you want to be in the world right here, right now. And it's because there is so much confusion and so much separation from, being who you authentically are and what society expects of you. And, should you be going to an Ivy League school or a fantastic university in the UK, or, I'm just doing it to try and climb the tree? Or is it something, or are you going to be an entrepreneur who is socially aware and wants to make a change, not just doing academia for academia's sake? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with academia as long as you're going to use it creatively later on in life. But if you're just doing it for the qualification with no reason and no heartfelt joy around it, it seems pretty hollow. And I've lived through that myself, where I would, I have 2 master's degrees, one in child psychology and one in nursing, and I'd look at it and go, why did I waste so much of my time doing that instead of, academia, instead of actually getting out there and working in the field more? Which I did do a fair amount, but probably not as much as I would like. And it is just those things. It's making sure that we are living with our bottom line in mind. And if it's not resonating with your bottom line, then you need to be asking yourself, why am I doing it? Am I doing it for... And there are times where we have to do things maybe that we don't want to do for a while. But I'll see you after the break.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, we know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntooak.org.uk.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
I think another point I wanted to cover and raise is that, you know, it's amazing how competitive we are right here, right now in our society. And, you know, it's a dog eat dog world, you know, all of those sayings about, you know, you've got to be more. You've got to, you know, you've got to be in competition with others. You know, if you don't get the best job, then somebody else is going to take it. And realizing that, you know, the tide is changing, definitely now more. And, you know, the things that work well is when we collaborate with other people and when we're working in teams of people. And we realise that, you know, some of our skills are complemented by somebody else, and some of the skills that we don't have can be supplied by somebody else. And we don't, you know, we're not always experts in every single field. You know, we have our strengths. We have, you know, there's lots of things that I enjoy doing that other people don't necessarily enjoy. And I also know that there's some things that I don't enjoy, which other people love to do. And that is fantastic. And if you can get together and collaborate in enjoyment and passion and joint passion, it's fantastic. And, you know, that's why Acorn to Oak works, is because we have a whole plethora of people who have similar interests, but also have different strengths and different things that they're great at. And one of the guys who's in the group, we josh him slightly because he's fantastic at spreadsheets. But, you know, sometimes people are, you know, can look at it and go, oh, you know, he's got some OCD. But bless him, it's fantastic skill. And I don't necessarily want to get down into the nitty-gritty of things. I'm a visionary. I love big visions. I love to play big. I love to be out there to help and inspire people. And that's not something that he would be good at. You know, he is a lot more pedantic than I am. And he loves the intricacies of things. Whereas me, I look at it, I look at the energy and I run with it. You know, for me, that is fantastic. But, and it is really great to work with all of these different characters who bring in their expertise and their uniqueness. And that's where genius is formed. And, you know, and in moving from the head to the heart, this is where the genius is actually comes from, is if you let go of the constraints of your conscious mind, that's when genius arrives. That's when amazing miracles happen every day, you know, and not just once a day, but every moment of every day. And, you know, that is where your joy is. And it's not just joy, it's ever new joy, ever new bliss, ever new peace, ever new contentment. because every breath you take allows you just to bring in more of this state, more of these abilities when you're living in the heart. And it doesn't mean that you don't pop out. Pop out of the heart and use the head when the head is needed. But just give it 10% of your attention, not 100% of your attention. And that's when you suddenly realize that, again, you can be unstoppable. You can be an unstoppable force for good. And creativity, and also in doing that, you also allow those resources to be brought out to a bigger community and the whole of humanity. And that's when you suddenly realize that you're living a much more impactful life. The more you serve others, the more everybody will be able to get some of that, what I call WD-40 of the universe. The grease, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But, that grease can become a global phenomenon. And it's really important to realize that some of those things of going from the head to the heart are really important. So one of the things that we said that we would talk about during this session, and what I want to spend some time on now, the next 10 minutes or so talking about, is what can you do to go from the head to the heart? What are the steps? Because people will talk about these things and then give you no practical help. So, for me, being an ex-nurse, I like practical things that work. So from the head, when you start becoming aware that your head is ruling the roost, and actually you use all of your mental powers to run your day-to-day life, it's really important to start bringing in some things that help you get in touch with your heart. So very much beginning to care for self, taking care of yourself and taking care of your bodily needs, i.e., eating healthy food, making sure that you're drinking enough water, practical things which are really important. In doing that, you're reinvesting in your physical self, which reinvests in your heart. So those practical things are really, really important. Then spending some really nice, good, quality time with yourself, which could be walking in nature. It could be, swimming in the sea. It could be going skiing. It could be, any of these things which are giving you, taking your physical body, but also beginning to use more feeling centers. If you go out for a jog, you begin to feel your heart beating, and you sync your heart and your breath with your physicality, and it's also grounding you into Gaia or Earth energy. So that's really important. Another thing that I do if I don't get time, because I have a 2.5-year-old son, if I don't get time to meditate in the morning, because usually it's full on household of getting him ready and getting him ready to go to nursery. I also have a dog, so I will use walking the dog in nature as a little bit of a walking meditation. And when I get home from walking the dog, that's when I actually get time to sit down and have a meditation where I'm sinking into self. I'm sinking into self, and I'm reconnecting with the divine or the spiritual, which then brings, heartfelt joy. So again, heartfelt joy. So in learning to do that and to spend time with self, getting to know self, getting to know where your stuff starts and where it finishes is really important. So it's beginning to get to know the totality of self. And as you get to know the totality of self, it's like sometimes we need to encourage that heart to go from a closed bud into a beautiful rose. And it's using all sorts of different techniques. Affirmations are good, visualizations are good, but also just imagining this bud-shaped heart in your chest and see it start to open and unfurl. And that one visualization can be so powerful. You know, sometimes when we do this in retreats or workshops, you know, people come back from a visualization like that and just go, I couldn't open the bud of my heart because there were vines around it or ivy around it, and it was making it so tight and closed. And it's just imagining that bud opening in your heart center. And in doing that, you know, again, using whatever colours make sense to you, maybe pinks or reds or even greens, to actually open that bud and beginning to see those petals move. And as you do that visualization, it's remembering to take a, you know, remembering to breathe, always take a good breath. In and out, and just allow that and sink into that center. And if nothing else, if you've never done it before, just put your hands on your heart, on your upper chest, and just feel that heart beating, and just know that, you know, boom, 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 boom. That's the center of myself. This is the pump that keeps me alive. This is not my head. My head cannot keep me alive. The one place, you know, when my heart stops, then there is death of the physical body. You know, it's really important to realize that it's the most magnificent pump and needs care and attention. And when you realize that, and you realize, as I was saying earlier on, that there's as many neurons in the heart as there are in the brain, and you suddenly realize actually what is important. The other thing that's interesting fact, and we need to remember, is there's just as many neurons in the gut as there are in the brain also. It's a long, hollow tube full of electrical activity, and we forget that, you know, that the other place that we look at for intelligence is gut intelligence. You know, we talk about our gut, you know, gut feeling, and it's true, the gut does feel. It's really important, but that's not what this show is about. We're talking about from the head to the heart. So again, it is really, really important to begin to understand that on that journey, there will be many different challenges. There'll be different things when we start to get our heart to feel it. You know, it can feel like it has been frozen. And again, I've worked with many people where, I've said to them, you know, you need to defrost your heart, because it has been hurt in the past. It has been through whatever story that is yours, which may include trauma, it may include childhood stuff, it may include all sorts of different stuff. And in healing those hurts, that's how the heart expands. Healing your heart, that's how you become alive. In healing your heart, it's what really gets you to realize that your mind is important, but it's not everything. And if I could get that one concept over to you this evening, is your head is important, but your heart means more. And this is where, if you live a heartfelt life, you will have a life that you enjoy, which you are impactful. You have an impactful life, which basically is on a global scale. And not just on a global scale, taking it even bigger on a universal scale. And I know in your hearts and in your heads, that's what you would love more than anything else. You would like to make footprints in the sand, and not just footprints, heart prints as well. And it's just, you really are passionate about what you feel more than anything else. And it's really important. So I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care, and go from the head to the heart.